Hello, welcome to our Diaspora Art Talk. My name is Rahel Zibner. I work as project manager at FNF Madrid, and I will be your host for this session. As you might have already heard during this day, the Friedrich Naumann Foundation is promoting freedom and human rights in more than 60 countries around the globe and in Southern Europe. And by engaging into creative dialogue, we want to create a space for free cultural debate and art to open up perspectives that are sometimes difficult for politics to point out. Philosopher and liberal politician Ralph Dahrendorf said, "Art and culture are the decisive pillar of freedom in a society," which is a basic condition for development and renewal of civil society. So therefore, freedom is not only our foundation's name, but it's also a central condition for artistic discourse and creative expression. Therefore, today, we want to talk about diaspora art with diaspora artists as a living example of cultural interaction and interconnection in the Mediterranean. And I'm very happy to introduce our two guests to you. First of all, I would like to welcome Nadia Hotait, who is a filmmaker and producer and video installation artist from Lebanon. Welcome, Nadia.
Thank you, Rahel.
It's great to have you. And also, I would like to welcome our second guest, who is joining us through Zoom today, who is architect and photographer Sana Frini from Tunisia. Hello, Sana. I hope you are connected to us. There we go. There you are. Hi, Sana. Good to have you.
Hi, Nadia.
Hello.
Hey.
Great. Let me introduce our two wonderful guests to our audience. First of all, I would like to welcome you, Nadia, and present your life and work to our audience. You use video, found footage, and photography to deal with events in contemporary history, you told me. We get to talk about that a little later. You lived and studied in several countries. You are originally from Lebanon, but you are living currently in Madrid, in Spain. Your first large exhibition was in 2011 at the University of Illinois University Galleries, and later on also you had a large exhibition at the Numismatico, I hope I pronounced that right?
In Mexico.
In Mexico, yes, in Mexico City in 2016. You participated in different exhibitions around the world with your video installations. In Venice, in Moscow, in Madrid, in Marrakesh, in Chicago, just to name a few. I think we could go on with that list. You received several art grants and awards for production. And you produce documentary and films with your sister, yes. You told me, Laia, which have been screened in film festivals, podcast channels like BBC Arabic, for example. And you were also a selected talent at the Berlinale International Film Festival in Berlin. Quite impressive. And then I would also like to introduce our second guest, Sana. She's an architect and photographer, as I have already said, from Tunis, and she's currently based in Mexico. She worked extensively on Mediterranean architecture, and her interests are focused on local practices to make architecture and on participatory mechanisms. She has a multidisciplinary approach to architecture, providing pragmatic and creative attributes. She was also a visiting critic at the University of Cornell for architecture, art, and planning, and her work has been shown in the Lisbon Architecture Triennale, Chicago Architecture Biennale, Mexican exhibition Abierto Mexicano, and so on. So, now that I introduced both of you to our audience, I think we can dive into our little talk today. And before diving into the discussion, I would like to elaborate a bit more why we're actually talking about diaspora and why we decided to talk about this topic today. Why don't we just talk about migration, for example? First of all, I think that diaspora is more a development and not so much a one-sided movement like it is implied in the term of migration. And the term itself has made quite an evolution over time. The term diaspora formerly referred primarily to expulsion and loss of territory, so it had a quite negative connotation. And later on, it really developed into a popular concept for multi-layered developments with quite positive connotations. And besides historically significant diasporic traditions, like the Jewish or the Greek or the Armenian diaspora, also other diasporas have become visible on the map. And in relation to art, the term refers to artists who migrated from one part of the world to another, and who therefore express their experience in their work from a different angle and often challenge common narratives. So therefore, I would like to ask both of you, from your experience, how would you define diaspora and the role of art?
Should I begin, Sana?
Yeah,
Yes?
of course.
Okay.
You are the first one, querida.
So for me, thank you, Rachel, for this beautiful introduction. That's first of all. I think we belong to this Arab diaspora, which is very, very big, and that maybe the most representative are the Palestinian people. In our case, mine is the Lebanese diaspora. For me, when I think about this term, I think more about how do we inherit it. How do we inherit those histories and those personal stories of our families and the history of the country that we also belong to. Me, in my case, I belong to. For me, I am Spanish and Lebanese. I feel both cultures are the same. So this diaspora, for me, it has allowed me to be able to deal with themes from places and to be an insider in both places, which allows me to work with topics from the different countries. But for me, it's this idea of inheriting those histories, sometimes the prejudices that comes from being from one place, and the prejudices from the other place. So I think that it's very rich to be part of this diaspora, and it's very sad sometimes because it comes with very tragical stories or tragedies like war and other things that. But for me, it's a very enriching state.
You're already touching upon history, which will be another important issue we're going to talk about. But before, I would also like to give Sana the floor if you want to add.
Well, I think that for me, diaspora, if I can add something related with Nadia, thinking that it's really related with belongings, this sense of belongings. So sometimes, for example, I feel myself like being part of this huge diaspora of MENA region or Arab background. So sometimes you have, even in the same diasporas, big differences, but at the end, it's a kind of a will of belonging, of physically and also metaphorically. No, so we are searching common grounds, and it's like a circle where you can develop yourself while connecting with your origin, backgrounds, thinking, way to see the things, basically.
Yeah, definitely. And you're both emphasizing very much the sense also of belonging, which I guess plays a huge role, especially for diaspora artists, as it is something which is never given. One must construct the point of reference somehow when being in a new environment. And also, along with belonging also comes the idea that you can have multiple belongings and multiple identities, and it must not be just connected to one place, for example. Yeah. So belonging also is very much connected to social cultural experience in history. And we cannot talk about the term of diaspora and diaspora art without taking into consideration the historical dimension. And the diaspora itself is a key feature of migration and integration as long as it exists, and migration exists as long as humankind exists. And diaspora, in brief, sustain national, cultural, and religious identity through a sense of internal cohesion and ties with the real or imagined homeland, one can argue. Nadia, you say, I read that on your webpage, that you deal with contemporary history in your art, emphasizing and prioritizing the experience of the individual above the accepted historical narrative. So can you elaborate a little more on this idea and how this is reflected in your work?
Well, for me, I work with video, and I deal with. I'm very interested about this because I think that the official history is the one that has. I mean, is the imperial history sometimes, no? And the idea of tackling onto the personal stories and histories become very, I think, become very urgent to really understand what happened really in history. Sometimes I can rely more on fiction or fictional characters sometimes than on the real history that is presented or the official version. So that's the reason that I deal with this in my videos. So maybe it's a good time that we can watch the connivance of the Night Between Ali and I, where I deal with a very important event in Lebanese history that actually had to do with my father's best friend when they hijacked the Bank of America in the 1970s. So shall we watch that video?
Yeah, can we see that video excerpt, please?
الظاهر في سيكوريتي كان احد حس علينا او لاحظ علينا انه في شيء غلط.
عم انظر العشية، نحن برمضان، هلا شهر رمضان، طبعا نحن قد ما فينا عم نحاول نبعد الفكرة.
نحن كفينا على الطابق الثالث مشي، وقفنا عند الاسانسير في مدخل الصالة، شلحنا الجاكيتات، شلنا الأسلحة، فتنا فجأة على صالة البنك، وطبعا صريخ وفوضى، وصارت شوية رعب يعني كانت لون للرهائن والزباين والموظفين.
نمنا.
Three-channel video installation that I made with my sister Laila, which is my collaborator, and what we did with this video, and it was to create this experience of reliving that experience that actually took place in Lebanon, that it hasn't been the focus of the big history books, but that it was talking about many things that were about to happen in the in the following war that took place in Lebanon. So we use our connections to it through, it was the story that our father has talked us about, and then we interview the people that actually hijacked the bank, the people that were in the bank, and we create this video installation to talk about this. So that's what I refer to when I talk about to deal with our personal histories, to talk about the big official history, and yes, that's what I talked about.
Yeah, a quite interesting approach, and definitely worth to check out a bit more of your work, I think. But today we also want to give a bit of space to Sana, and my next question is especially directed to Sana. The term of diaspora can also be referred to a life model. And this is very much manifested, especially in architecture. So if we just think of the influences into architecture, if we just walk along the streets here in Madrid, and the rich cultural heritage from these diasporas, which were also transformed into spatial manifestations. Architecture is something we can experience in our daily life because we see the architecture around us, we live in it. And also, architecture can be a cultural and spatial practice, creating space for dialogue and means of expression. And public space is really an important factor. It is the core of free life to enable participation, dialogue, and diversification. And if we think of diversification, if we just think of neighborhoods which have been shaped by their diasporic communities, like San Francisco, for example, if we think of Chinatown, we can see how these migrants from Asia over the centuries have refurbished this quarter of the city. So, Sana, as an architect, what can you tell us about this heritage and the interconnectedness in the Mediterranean from the point of view of an architect?
Well, it's a really interesting and a big question, and we can talk about it like during hours. Let's say that, for example, for me personally, it was like one of the arguments why I stayed and I tried to learn a lot in the Mediterranean Sea is the fact that all this migration in both sides led us, like architecture used to always be the mirror of the society. And somehow in the Mediterranean Sea, with the more than 3,000 years of history in architecture, we have a lot of examples, like official example, like for example, Alhambra and Granada, like Cordoba, and the Mosque of Cordoba, and we have this layers and layers constructing identity. If we go, for example, in the south of Portugal and the southern Spain, North Africa, like in Tunisia, you see at the end that architecture is a tool of politics and tool to sometime but common grounds and symbolically represent cycles, but also create like the spaces like the agora, for example, as a references to see people to debate and to recreate the common things that we have and the dialogues, basically. So let's say that at the end, and if we talk about diaspora also, at the end, we are not that, sometimes we are not that different that we think, no? Because we recreate spaces through what we want to do and to belong. And that's a physical argument to settle this idea of humanity, of dialogue, and also this will to understand and to connect with each other. let's say.
Yeah, I think we should have another session just on these spaces. I find that super interesting, but I know that we already got some comments and some questions from our audience. So I will continue with our little talk and then make sure that we finish on time so that we can still allow these questions to be asked. So before we do that, I would like to have a look also at the country of origin. We very much had kind of a look at the country which is hosting. And I also would like to take a look at the backlashes on the country of origin. I mean, when we think of that, most prominently what always comes straight away to our mind are financial remittances. But I don't want to go down that line today because it's a quite political discussion, which can also be quite controversial. So that is not our topic today. But apart from these financial aspects, we can also think of the influences which are going back to the host society the society of origin in form of social remittances. So diasporas usually maintain a relationship with the place of origin, and therefore they also foster technology transfers, knowledge and information exchange, and also democratic value transmissions. So yeah, Nadia, what is your thought on that?
It's very interesting, the idea of the remittances. It makes me think about different things and how I have lived through those remittances, because I think that we've been in this constant bridge where we were coming and returning to Lebanon, which is very normal state of being, especially all Lebanese families had ties abroad, and this has been for a long time. Not only during the war, but even in the 19th century. You know? So all the Lebanese families have ties abroad, which sometimes also allows you to travel abroad and to decompress from the tension that the Middle East has been under because of the several occupation and wars and things like that. So for us, it has allowed us to be able to have a very healthy relationship with, and to be totally in love with our country of origin. That's my case, and accepting its mistakes and the beautiful and its beautiful part. So we have had the possibility of having a healthy relationship to be able to create and to think and to see ourselves within this society and outside. And that because of that we continue to work. I continue to work both in Spain and in Lebanon with my art.
Yeah, yes. Yeah. Wonderful. I, as you're talking about your art, I guess one of the preconditions also for your art is that you have the preconditions to express it freely and to live in a society which is tolerant and open to your art and diverse also. And I'm just thinking of the latest developments we've seen around the world where open liberal democracies have gotten under pressure, not only since COVID-19 pandemic, but also if we think of nationalist or populist movements, which were challenging fundamental liberal values such as democracy, peace, freedom, the rule of law, tolerance, and human rights. And especially if we look at human rights, obviously they're only valid if no one is excluded from these rights. And it's a supreme obligation of states to guarantee these rights, and also so that the society has spaces for free and critical thinking, and can express their opinion. And these spaces, I find that a very worrying development. These spaces lately have been shrinking. If we just think of artists in Russia or Turkey being deprived of the freedom of opinion and expression. So I think it's really everyone's responsibility to respect and to demand these rights. And I'm just thinking about the role art can play and how it's interconnected, what role this environment plays for your art. And can art open a small door, for example, in authoritarian regimes, if we think of that, to show people a small step into the possible inside the impossible?
Well, that's a very beautiful question. Should I begin, Sana?
Sana, do you want to?
Or you
start?
As you like.
Well,
go ahead if you want.
Okay, I'll try to be brief. I think of two things. For me, it's not just in an authoritarian regime. I was thinking like that. The idea of art being didactical, I always, sometimes I find myself that I don't want to be didactic with my art. Even though we were talking about exhibiting the art in an authoritarian place, I'm talking about or just showing it in somewhere else, like showing, in my case, I have many of my video installations are in Arabic and has been screened here in Spain or in other places. For me, the art experience, what it does is that it allows to open that window into a particular topic, but it's not trying to teach you something about it. It's just looking for that empathy and to engage as a human being. And when you have an artistic experience, I think that what the idea is that it actually allows you to engage with that other human being, even though the language is different. I don't know if we should show now the videos or like a small part of the videos, and then so we, yes?
Yes. Can we see?
اوكي خليكي شوية
Frame.
اكشن جراندو
Camera rolling.
اكشن
لا
Connivance of Watching Birds. It was screened here in Madrid, and it's speaking about the situation of Palestinians in Lebanon, and in also something that had to do with a specific story. So the thing is, like, when you engage with the viewer through an artistic experience, it doesn't matter if it's in Arabic or in English or in other language. Well, at least it's useful that they can read the subtitles, that for sure. But for me, the idea is like that it helps both in non-democratic or democratic. I am not saying that Lebanon is not democratic, but it's a very long conversation that we have to talk about. But the idea of be able to bring people closer to these themes, it allows you to connect and, of course, to be able to engage and demand those human rights or things like that, because you empathize with the situations, in this case, in this video installation, of Palestinians that are deprived from their land, or you engage because you are seeing human beings as you. Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Sana, you wanted also to add very quickly, because I know time is running.
Yeah, but very quickly, I think that is a great question. I think that art, for me, it's a great tool of sarcasm and critics. And as I grew up in a dictatorship in Tunisia, while Ben Ali was in the government, and when you see the young people along this recent Tunisian history, I think that you develop a kind of like sarcastic tools and way to be resilient and to express yourself. So for example, from my point of view, like since I've been working in different kind of fields in art and like installation, for example, we used a lot of sarcasm and in art to talk about the war in the United States, for example, or to talk about the issue we have, like regarding, for example, the system of prison and the word or whatever. But somehow art can give you these tools that make like opening the debate to go and to analyze your society and have your own position.
Yeah, exactly. So another strong plaidoyer for art to engage into these artistic debates. But now I want to hand over to Natalia, who has a question from the audience to our guests. Natalia.
Yes, indeed, I do have a question, which is from Nara Evans. And the question is, do you think that cultural diversity through art and literature can build bridges between groups and people and create peace among Mediterranean countries?
Nadia,
Yeah,
I know it's a big question. Just
yeah. Thank you, Natalia.
No worries.
So should I? Well, Sana, you will help me with this. For me, I think art is one part of it.
Yeah, I can help you with this one if you want.
Yeah.
I can answer it really basically. I am the example of this big question. No? I've been living in Portugal, Spain, North Africa, and different places. I think that when you answer to fear, I mean, people doesn't have, when you don't have an idea about what you have in front, and you are like constructing an identity of the other through images and propaganda on the TV, whatever. And when you are in front of the unknown, it's really difficult to understand each other. But lately, and I think that in the last 20 years. People started like to have connection in both sides in the Mediterranean Sea, and for me, for example, the culture and this going through the places and understanding the languages and like being part of this helped me to both understand discolonizing, doing the process of discolonizing my own mind. To understand that at the end, it's that culture helps you to understand that you are on the same boat, and you just need to improve your tools to express yourself and understand the other one. So definitely, I mean, through culture, education especially, I am personally like a fan of saying that you need to, before waiting to another person's like thinking about you and help you to connect with his reality, it's your duty to improve your tools to connect and to understand the other one. And it's through culture, education, and curiosity simply. It's a responsibility to be curious and to make these bridges and to make this understanding happen. I don't know if I answered well or no.
I think I can only agree that education really is the key for a society which is living a climate of mutual respect and tolerance, because I mean, we know knowledge is the key to self-determination and empowerment, and a basic condition for a society to be diverse and to be tolerant to people with other backgrounds. So the precondition really is the education of the individual for tolerance and diversity and interconnection. What is your view?
Well, I was thinking that connecting to both the audience question and this, I am thinking that yes, education can do a lot, but is also because she was Nara in the audience. She was talking about if it can help to create peace. I think, of course, we can establish these bridges, create cultural programs, but of course the most important thing is the policies and how do, like from all the regions, not in the Arab world and also in Europe, like how do we establish policies that help peace? Because I can be talking about the Syrian refugees in my art, but of course it has to come from policies, or it has to come like when now sorry, because this is happening right now, that Israel just want to annex Palestine. It's not going to be through cultural art, but it's going to be through through engagement. Of course, people have to be sensible and have to be thinking that this is not right, something right to do, and because this cannot happen in the 21st century. But of course, it has to be through policy that peace will prevail or will exist. That what is not existing right now. That's what I think. So yeah.
Great. Yeah, I think we should meet again and continue our super interesting talk. I would like to thank both of our guests very, very much for joining us today. And coming up next on the EU Mena show is the theater interlude. What's coming up next? So make sure you watch it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.